Donald Trump appears to have washed his hands with Ukraine in a blow to Keir Starmer. JD Vance told Fox News the US had done what it could, but the war isn't going away.
I really don't believe that any person, of the 8 billion people in the world, I don't think anybody could have gotten this deal done other than Donald J. Trump. When I say this deal, I mean getting these guys to actually propose a peace settlement. But it's going to be up to the Russians and the Ukrainians. Now that each side knows what the other's terms for peace are, it's going to be up to them to come to an agreement and stop this brutal conflict. It's not going anywhere, Brett. It's not going to end anytime soon.
Trump had warned his patience was running out.
If for some reason one of the two parties makes it very difficult, we're just going to say you're foolish, you're fools, you're horrible people, and we're going to just take a pass. But hopefully we won't have to do that. No, Marco's right in saying it. We want to see it end.
And he lost his temper when Putin struck Ukraine while negotiations were ongoing.
We're in the midst of talking peace and missiles were fired, and I was not happy with it. We're putting a lot of pressure on Russia, and Russia knows that, and some people that are close to it know, or he wouldn't be talking right now. It takes two to tango, and you have to have Ukraine want to make a deal too, and they're being hit very hard, and I do believe they want to make a deal.
Meanwhile, in Europe, Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron have led the charge to create a coalition of the willing to guarantee peace in Ukraine.
And we agreed here in Paris today that it's clear the Russians are filibustering. They are playing games and they're playing for time. It is a classic from the Putin playbook. This is Europe mobilizing together behind the peace process on a scale that we haven't seen for decades. Backed by partners from around the world, we are determined to deliver a just and lasting peace, because we know that it is vital for Ukraine and Europe as a whole. And I am clear that it's also vital for Britain.
But Trump ridiculed Starmer and the UK on the country's capacity to confront Russia.
If the British people are in Ukraine and they get attacked, I've always found about the British, they don't need much help. They can take care of themselves very well. But if they need help, I'll always be with the British, okay? I'll always be with them. But they don't need help. You look at their career, you have done very well over the years, haven't you?
We have. I'm very proud of our country. And but we've also always been there backing each other up between our two countries. That is why this is the greatest alliance for prosperity and security I think the world has ever seen. Whenever necessary, we've absolutely backed each other up, and that's at the core.
Could you take on Russia by yourselves?
Well,
all right, one or two.
Hopes had been raised of an increased US focus on Ukraine after the two negotiated a minerals deal. But one expert says the US knew Ukraine may lose further territory, and the deal was based on previous services rendered rather than a commitment to fresh aid.
There was an initial deal, and that deal was access to those rare earth metals, which are under dispute, as I say, in exchange for services rendered, as in not in exchange for future monies or for security guarantees for Ukraine, but in fact for past assistance. So in a sense, there was a degree of extortion there. Ukraine was to hand over its wealth in return for what it had supposedly been given. That deal has now been revised somewhat, but the terms of it are still unclear. But again, they have to be unclear if you don't know who's controlling the ground over the top of the minerals, and if you don't know the true volume and extent of them. We know that in one of his rasher moments, shall we say, that President Trump called Volodymyr Zelensky a dictator without elections. Zelensky's response was, "Well, I'm happy to cede power, but if I do so, then I'm going to need something back from you." So he seems willing. He appears willing to make a certain self-sacrifice if Ukraine gets something in return. But as it stands, and I need to be clear about this, Ukraine isn't getting enough back for there to be a substantial deal. And the difference is, of course, is that in the US, almost any deal is a good deal, whereas in the United States, in Ukraine, a bad deal is worse than no deal.
But given the terms of the deal were negotiated with Kyiv and not Moscow, the US still has an incentive to back the Ukrainians.
There is if there is a financial deal done, it implies a future Kiev government. This deal is not currently with the Russians. Now, the Americans may well wish to do it with the Russians in time if the Russians are controlling this territory by virtue of an enforced ceasefire, armistice, or whatever you will. But at the moment, as it stands, this deal is between Kiev and Washington. So that in itself will please the Ukrainians, and I think that is why they want to go, even if the terms do not look to be particularly financially favourable.
Donald Trump may remain more committed than he seems, but Vance's comments will be worrying for Europe. The US president has a tendency to create chaos.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have.
And his popularity is currently suffering as Americans take to the streets. When it comes to Ukraine, however, it's a waiting game.
The economy contracting for the first time in 3 years. How much do you think this is down to President Trump's tariffs, and how much is it down to the legacy left by Joe Biden?
Well, that's the question everyone's asking. I mean, Ellie, there's no doubt that we've seen this tariff chaos really playing out. We've had different announcements, backtracking on certain announcements, backtracking on certain tariffs. So there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of volatility in the markets at the moment. And business owners that I've been speaking to across America, they're worried. They don't know what this will mean for their long-term business interests. So there is some merit in the argument where you heard President Trump saying there, look, give us some time. This is our first 100 days. We've made some of these big sweeping changes that I was elected on the platform to do. This is what people want. Interestingly, Ellie, some of the polls that have been coming out have been showing that, that there is some negativity. His ratings are down amongst parts of the American public, and in large part due to this economic uncertainty. So we're really, I think, at this stage, watching and pretty much every day at the moment, every week certainly, there is a new development when it comes to the tariffs and these deals that are being made and announced. And we really don't have much detail at the moment yet on exactly what these include. We just have what the White House is saying, which is that it's all going ahead successfully. And so, that's not enough to calm the markets right now. And we're already seeing the impact on the economy here in the US.
I mean, one positive headline in the last day, Sarah, has been the rare minerals deal, which has finally been signed with Ukraine.
Yes, this is Washington quite literally turning its investment in Ukraine material. They've signed this landmark deal for joint access to some of Ukraine's rare minerals. So things like graphite, titanium and lithium, amongst many other things. Look, Ellie, this is resource diplomacy, right? The US are trying to counter China's dominance in this area when it comes to rare earth minerals. And Ukraine, for its part, is seeing this as potential security with the US having business interests in Ukraine.